Okay.
I like when, and this happens a lot, when they're like, "Oh, I closed against Bennett Dembski,
Yes.
and Ian Lampert told me mine was good
Right.
too."
Or like I closed against Sarah Stebbins and we split the closings. Or like somebody once told me that I was as good as so and so. Or, Sydney said she liked my closing.
We
Like
lost to
those,
Harvard by single digits at Works.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, obviously, like enough of those details are useful, but the problem is you can't like you can't verify them, and everybody's got a story like that. So we look at the video and people's results.
My middle name is Ian Lampert. So why are you all dressed up?
This is my first lecture of the semester. I just did it earlier today. Why are you not dressed up?
This is dressed up as far as WatchMock is concerned. This is my uniform
Very nice.
for the show. Obviously, you don't watch, right? Because
Actually, I
you
was
would
going to
know
say
that.
you did a great interview of Danny Kunkel,
Oh yeah, what was your favorite part?
where she talked about the final round against my team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have learned that information from the description. You didn't need to watch necessarily.
Well, I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
How'd the lecture go?
I think it went pretty well. I always start my first lecture with an opening statement. um, like I literally don't say like "Welcome to Trial Ad." Hello. I just start with an opening statement to sort of give a flavor of what the class is going to be, and then they do critique what they liked, what they don't like, and that's sort of the basis of the class. It's performance, feedback, trying to improve.
Now, I've heard about this lecture before, so I know a little bit about what happens. But for those who don't know, what opening statement do you deliver?
I use Rahul Hari's opening from Top Gun in 2015, but not his defense one. I use the prosecution one where I don't think there's any video because we only used it in earlier rounds.
Uh, who performed better, you tonight or Rahul that weekend?
Rahul that weekend. He won all of his ballots on the state side.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean that's why I performed that one though because there's no video. Nobody can compare me to Rahul.
It's hard to believe. This is our. I had to do the math today, and even when I did the math, I could not believe it. Our seventh trial by combat. Isn't that crazy?
When you said seventh to me, I was like, that can't be right. It doesn't feel like we've done that many, but it's awesome.
Before we talk about the details of this year's trial by combat, I want to talk a little bit about the history of the tournament. So you
Right?
created Trial by Combat when you were teaching at Drexel in 2017. So that was your year at Drexel, and I was a third year student at the time. I think for the first Trial by Combat, my job was ordering the cheesesteaks that we had one day. So I was not on the leadership of the tournament like I am now. I didn't join that.
I think ordering the cheesesteaks is a pretty vital role.
That's true. It's like food, logistics, case as far as our priorities, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think you were at minimum third in command just by ordering the cheesesteaks.
Right. That's a fair point. Well, in any event, I didn't formally join the leadership until 2020 when I became the director of the program at Drexel. So rewinding back to 2017, it's the fall semester. You're here at Drexel, and you decide you want to create this event. Why did you decide you wanted to start Trial by Combat?
So I'd had the privilege of competing, or should say coaching, at Top Gun a few times before that, in 2013, 15, and 16. And it was the best event I'd ever been to. AMTA Nationals, incredible. Some law school tournaments are really great. Some high school tournaments are really good. This was the best tournament I've ever been to, both in terms of execution and design. I just loved the way that it challenged top competitors. And when I got back from the second one and that I'd been to, I think it had been 15, I had already been planning to launch one for high school students called Gladiator. And we're going to do Gladiator 10 this year, which I can't believe. and it'd gone really well with high school students. We'd modified the format to include them playing witnesses, and to give them a lot more time than the law students get. And so when I got the job at Drexel, I remember my conversation with Dean Filler, who was then the dean and is still the dean and is incredibly supportive of trial advocacy. And I asked for two things after I took the job. One was to have scholarships, which are now the courtroom scholarships at Drexel, specifically for AMTA students. And the second was to have trial by combat as a way to honor the very best of college competitors. There was just nothing that gave them a platform to showcase what they could do. And I remember like being really prepped for the call with Dean Filler and being like, had like all my talking points, but he immediately said yes. So our 30-minute call was about 2.5 minutes. And I was like, okay, great, thanks. And we got to launch it.
One of the things that I remember was really important to you that we talked a lot about when you were planning the initial event was this is a new event. And actually, when I had Danny on for our most recent episode, I asked her about sort of being invited to this event that was unknown at the time.
Neil maybe had some whispers from Justin that he had been thinking about putting together this kind of competition. And so Neil had told me about it, before we sent in my application or whatever we did. And at the time I was like, heck yeah, a trip to Philly, competing one more time, one last hurrah.
I remember at the time, part of your goal was to try to find, to state the obvious, the best competitors and programs and coaches in the country to come to the first event to sort of lend it legitimacy immediately.
So I think a competition like this is only legitimate if it has the very best people. And I wanted as quickly as possible for our event to be there. My goal was by year 3 to have the top of the top, the creme de la creme. We got it in year 1, and the goal was, or I should say the goal, the way we approached it is I reached out to people that I knew would be accepted if they applied, and I tried to get them to sign on. I don't have a list in front of me of everybody, but I remember I really wanted Sarah Stebbins to join. I knew that she'd been extremely successful at Georgia Tech. I didn't know her at the time. I didn't have any idea that she would one day be my student. We reached out to Miami, Ohio, and Danny Kunkel, to Jack Siegenthaler and Tom Shear at Stanford. And I think we reached out very early on to, I could be wrong about this, but I think we reached out very early on to the two folks who were eventually in the finals, Rachel and Nick, amazing competitors from Columbia and NYU respectively. And the idea was if we could fill half the field with 8 amazing competitors, then that would entice other tremendous competitors to apply and get involved. And we did. I mean, I think we made almost exactly the number of invitations as there were spots. And we got like a world-class field. Like in year 1, we averaged more than 1 All-American per competitor.
When you look at the 2018 field and compare it to the subsequent fields, there's really no difference in terms of quality. I mean, you would never know that we were sort of unsure back in 2017 and 2018, that leading up to that first combat, that we weren't going to necessarily get the best of the best. I mean, the field is exceptional. It was at the time, and especially looking back on now, what those students have gone on to accomplish. So it was a really great field.
It's amazing. It's like a who's who.
I remember that we were kicking around different names. Do you remember what some of the names we were kicking around for the event were?
So obviously, Trial by Combat was one of them. I think we thought about a name, The One.
That was my favorite, and I can admit that I was wrong. That was a dumb name.
I remember we talked about The Advocate, and I think we just thought them through, and I really liked Trial by Combat. I think it grew on me. I don't know that I liked it originally, but I liked I also think it appealed to me because it was a little bit similar to Gladiator, and I felt like an extension of that.
While we're on the subject of the name of the event, I think the most common sort of shorthand for the event is TBC, which is like nails on a chalkboard to me. Does it bother you?
Yes and no. So like I call it Trial by Combat, or if I'm going to abbreviate, I'll call it Combat. I think it's more fun than TBC and fewer syllables. But I like the fact that it's well known enough that people are going to use initials. Like that was inevitable, and I think it's a sign that people know what it is. But I'm not going to say I've never used the initials, but I think I pretty much always call it combat.
Yeah, I refuse to call it TBC out of protest. I don't think I've
Oh,
ever. I think
well,
on the show tonight is the first time I've said it. The
oh,
inaugural trial by combat, of course, was that June in 2018 at the Drexel Kline Institute of Trial Advocacy in Philly, which is where the most recent trial by combat was this past summer in 2023. What did you learn from the first tournament?
that this was going to be great. I mean, remember the feeling in the building. I mean, I grew up at AMTA. Like, I mean, I didn't do high school mock trial. Like, AMTA was where I started with mock trial, and I just loved it. And I've obviously been involved ever since, either writing cases or coaching or being on the board. And I've never felt electricity at a competition like that. I mean, obviously everybody's nervous because they've just had the case 24 hours. They're like, I don't know if I'm prepared or not prepared. But there was just this buzz of like the very best people being there, and everybody sort of pushed their limits. And it's the one competition in college, and this is true, I think, in high school and in law school too, with Gladiator and Top Gun, where of course you want to do well, but losing, it doesn't hurt the same way. I mean, granted, everybody has high expectations for themselves at events like this, but there's something about just being there and being part of that special group, and that like limited group is just so special. And we felt it in year one. I was like, oh, this is even better than I thought it was going to be, and it was fun to like pop into the rounds and see these extraordinary competitors. And I mean, it's just amazing how good they are with 24 hours. And they don't even get to keep doing the same case, because after they do one round as a lawyer, they're doing it on a different side. They do one witness, they're doing the other witness. By the time they get a second round, they've got case changes. And they make it look easy, but it's extraordinary. So I remember that feeling of being like, wow, this works. That's my biggest memory from year one.
People may not know this, but the first year there was no semifinal round. It broke from 16 to 2. So Danny Kunkel, I think, was in a de facto semifinal round 4 against Nick Ramos, and the winner of that round was probably going to go to the final. And she lost a close round to Nick. But if that round or that tournament had occurred with a semifinal in the format that we use now, Danny probably would have made the playoff. I actually don't. We could probably figure that out, but I don't know. In any event,
I do. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Do you know?
I know who was third, because I remember it was the third place coach that implored me to add a semifinal for the next year. It was Tom at Stanford, and Jack Siegenthaler, his competitor. They finished third, and so he's like, "Well, I won't use the language that Tom used, but he politely suggested that we add a semifinal the next year."
And as always, Tom was right, and we did that for the next year.
Yeah, and the big reason we didn't have it in year one is I was worried about the timing. I didn't want the rounds to run long and people to miss flights. And when I saw that the rounds were really quick and predictable in length, I was like, okay, why not add a semifinal? It's more fun, it's more fair, and we've had it ever since.
What other changes did we make from year 1 to year 2?
The only other significant change from 1 to 2 wasn't even that significant. We changed the scoring system slightly to go from check marks as the primary measure of how people were doing to ballots won. So I think at the first measure, 4-3 on a ballot was the same as 7-0 after we made the change. Before that, the 7-0 was a bigger margin of victory than 4-3. And then now check marks are a tiebreaker. So we look to ballots won now.
You left Drexel around that time to become UCLA's director of trial advocacy. And from that point forward, in the first year, it was a Drexel event. And from that point forward, Drexel and UCLA co-hosted the event. And before I ask you a question, I just want to show you a confession. Drexel and UCLA being the two schools that sponsor TBC is so funny. Your reaction?
I've got a few reactions. First of all, whoever wrote this is much cooler than I am, because they have extra Y at the end of funny. I've learned from my students that makes you cool. So kudos to them. Second, can I be super nitpicky?
Sure.
We don't sponsor it, we host it. Like, it's actually put on by the schools. Like, in other words, we're not saying like, this is the Fiesta Bowl brought to you by Doritos. Like, this isn't like Trial by Combat sponsored by, like, these are the schools that actually host it.
Yeah, it's not like, if you put a picture of a dragon on your case binder, we'll give you $1,000. Like we are the ones carrying the cheesesteaks into the building. Like
That's
it's
right. We get
me.
we carry the cheesesteaks. I don't know. I actually don't get the joke or why it's funny, but I think it's actually super appropriate that Drexel and UCLA host the event because these are schools that are unusually committed to trial advocacy. I actually think that we give more trial ad scholarships than any two other schools in the country. So it makes sense that we would host the College Mock Trial 101 Championship.
I think we probably give more trial advocacy scholarships than maybe all the other law schools combined. I mean, I don't know that that's true for sure, but it's not close.
Well, now it's a fact. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
anything on the show obviously is gospel. Um,
right.
so let's end the controversy here. How did the partnership between Drexel and UCLA with respect to trial by combat begin?
So when I got the job at UCLA at the end of my first year at Drexel, and I got to move back to California, it was like sort of a dream job to get to start because it was a brand new program. I got to start the program. I knew that trial by combat had gone great, and I wanted to continue to work with it. There's no way that I could just be like, oh, I'm taking it to UCLA. Drexel had invested in it, um, and it wouldn't be right to try to even start like a different competition. I wanted that to persist. I wanted Drexel to be involved, and so I had to sort of convince both deans to make it happen. I remember both deans asked the same question, like, why should we share this thing? Like, why should we share with the other school? And to Drexel, I said because UCLA may not have a trial ed program now, or we're just in its infancy, but I don't know. I think you should bet on us. I think we're going to be really good. And Dean Filler was really supportive and it's like, yeah, we'll partner with UCLA. And I told our then Dean Manukin at UCLA that Drexel was the best trial ed school on the East Coast and a major player in that world and one that we would be lucky to partner with. Um, and I think both schools are really happy for the partnership.
Yeah. So I started running trial by combat with you in 2020, so in year three.
Hmm.
And 2020, that was the height of the pandemic in June of 2020. Um, trial by combat was, of course, on Zoom in 2020.
Hmm.
Um, do you remember how we decided we were going to have the tournament on Zoom rather than canceling it outright, like nationals has been canceled?
I don't remember ever considering canceling it. I remember being like in doubt about what was going to happen, but I mean, a lot of people listening probably don't remember this, but very quickly after the pandemic sort of became the pandemic everywhere, very soon after classes got moved online and AMTA postponed and then eventually canceled its national competitions. Literally that week, we announced the online national championship that UCLA Law was hosting for college students, where they could submit videos, and we'd had best opening, best closing, and best witness performances. And so that wasn't Zoom; those were just recorded videos. But I remember thinking, like, this format's going to be fine. And we very quickly switched our classes, like every other school, to the Zoom format. And I was teaching trial ed on Zoom. And these were not experienced competitors. These are people without prior experience, and they were doing fine. And so I think the question was not if we were going to do it, but just how we were going to do it. And I remember being very exciting because AMTA Nationals had been canceled that year. So this was the first college mock trial competition on Zoom. So it felt like a great opportunity to set a standard, to show people that it could be done, to show people that it could be done, and people to have fun. And I think people embraced it with the use of exhibits. We tried to have tons of exhibits in the case with videos and photos and things where you want to be zooming in and circling things. And we tried to, turn lemons into lemonade.
Yeah, it was the first collegiate mock trial competition, but it was only the second mock trial competition on Zoom, period. The first one being Top Gun, which was like 2 weeks earlier.
Right.
And so, I think the thing that we take for granted is that no one knew how to do this. I remember, sitting on Zoom together, you and me,
Mhm.
with the other tournament volunteers that we had at the time, like trying to figure out breakout rooms and like if we go in the breakout room and hit record there, like, will it mess up this? And will screen sharing work? And like trying and figuring all that out.
Let's see what happens if I try to go to the break room. I don't think it'll let me go, but let's find out.
I mean, now we take it for granted because lots of Zoom events like Rookie Rumble and all the law school Zoom events that we have and those tournaments are sort of just there's a sort of a formula for how to do it. What was the most challenging thing for us at the time in getting this thing going and making it a success?
Figuring out how to get everybody their sweatshirts and t-shirts, even though they weren't going to be in person. I remember, I mean, I'm joking about that, but the big one that we sweated over was, how do you deal with a no communication rule? Because in person, it's pretty easy to make sure people aren't communicating. You don't really have to worry even about like cell phones or people talking at the break, because there are no breaks at Trial by Combat. So in person, it's like the easiest rule to enforce with the no communication. Online, how do you do that? And I think what we settled on is we trust people. Sure, coaches could be behind the screen doing stuff they shouldn't be doing or communicating on text threads or whatever, but we selected people that we thought were both competitive and but also ethical. So that was something we talked about a lot. We really wanted to be able to record the rounds, and so I mean, now of course, like you said, we all know how to record and use breakout rooms and things like that, but we were still trying to figure that out and make sure that all of our volunteers were comfortable. So we did a lot of volunteer orientation that year, more than we've ever done. And we had more volunteers than we've ever had because we wanted to make sure we got it right. And I think we really were like, okay, how long do we have to get judges to sign in advance? Because usually you run an AMTA competition, you ask the judges to come like 45 minutes or an hour beforehand. And you don't want to do that on Zoom. And we realized, okay, we don't need to do that. We did the judge instruction earlier in the week. So we tried to find advantages. So we did one judge instruction rather than one for every round, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I still do my judge instructions for my in-person tournaments on Zoom earlier in the week because I mean, it's one of the sort of things that we took from COVID, from Zoom mock trial was you didn't need to have your judges there an hour in advance. Give them the spiel on, on Zoom earlier in the week, or send them a recording if they can't make it, and then remind them of a couple things 10 minutes before and send them on their way. And I think the judges appreciate it. And I think it's just better.
Yeah. I mean, to borrow your expression, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but looking back on that year on Zoom, the first year, I think we got a lot right. And some of it was luck, and some of it was we really tried hard to think about the different ways to do this. And I'd like to think that we helped set a standard for how things can be done on Zoom. And of course, people have improved it since then, but I'm proud of the way we did it in year one.
I'm going to pat us on the back, and we
Nice.
invented Zoom mock trial. Just say it. I'm looking into the camera. We invented Zoom mock trial. Everything that you see on Zoom is us. Trial by Combat. Yes, we did it. Us and the unnamed volunteers.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a lot of controversy about the selection process, and I've had to bear the brunt of it online mostly. Let's just, call it what it is. You won't defend me on confessions because you don't have a Facebook.
Right.
So first question, are you aware that social media is free?
Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't cost any money to have a Facebook. You know that, right?
Yeah, but I thought only old people use Facebook now. No?
No, apparently angry teenagers who want to hurt my feelings also use it. So,
So you asked me earlier, what's the meanest thing that my students have said to me in class? What is the meanest thing that someone said to you on Mock Trial Confessions?
some pretty mean, pretty mean. So if I won't even say them, that's how mean they are.
I mean, I'm sure they've said worse about me. I just have the luxury of not being on there.
So when we got a barrage of confession posts 2 years ago,
Yeah.
I was out to lunch with some of my friends who are not mock trial people, and I just opened my phone and was scrolling and reading them, and my friends were like, "What are you reading?" And they could just see my face, and they still tease me about that. So thank you, anonymous students, for
We say students plural. It could be one person just post. It just be like Warahe, like just going to town one after another.
Right. That's people sit there. I was like, well, you don't know. It could be the same person posting it 45 times. And to that, I say, if that is true, if someone is posting 45 different posts about me, then honestly, I respect them. I do. I really respect that.
I mean, it seems like something you would do if you were on the other side of this, right?
I think it's great. If that's true, do it.
I mean, that's just enthusiasm.
Yeah, it just shows they like the event.
Right.
Okay, so you are aware that Facebook is free, and so we can
Yeah.
expect
Yeah.
to see you vigorously defending me on confessions this cycle, right?
Yeah.
All right, great. So why don't you let the people know how you and I make selections?
We try to find the 16 best people in the country.
I mean, literally, that's what we do. I mean, we are on a Zoom like this sometimes, or on the phone, sifting through the applications, watching videos. I'll watch one and say, this person's great. Why don't you take a look? Vice versa. We'll, read the competitions they've gone to, see where they've won awards, et cetera. I mean, we really are just trying to identify the 16 best people by any means, right? It's actually not that interesting.
I mean, I know I gave like a short answer, but that's because that's it. Like we're just trying to find the 16 best. I mean, the one caveat to that is we don't take multiple people from the same school. So that can be hard. And I'm not going to pretend that there haven't been situations in the past where you could argue that two people in the top 16 are from the same school. That's certainly been the case. But apart from that limitation, it's just trying to find the best people.
Yeah, and I'd also say that I think on all things being equal, we prefer to have a senior or a junior rather than a freshman or a sophomore, right?
Yeah, and that's true. It also is usually easy to fill that goal because generally your seniors are gonna be better than your juniors are gonna be better than the sophomores, but there are exceptions. I mean, the first sophomore we've ever taken was Cindy Gaskins, and that obviously worked out really well. She was tremendous. And so we have a long history of taking some underclassmen who were great. We've still never had a freshman at Trial by Combat. But yeah, we want to have seniors. We want to have a field that is diverse in all respects. But we want the best people.
The application is out. The link to the application is in the description of this episode. So as competitors are filling out their applications, what are some tips that we would have for potential applicants, and what are some things that we would suggest applicants avoid?
The biggest tip, I mean, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, but I'll say my biggest tip is include video. It is so helpful. I mean, there are people who win a bunch of awards at competitions where you only have a few of the top teams, and it's hard to know how much value to place on the awards from a particular tournament, especially when someone is competing on a team that doesn't get as many opportunities to compete against the best in the country. And the videos are huge. So I don't want to say every single person last year submitted video, but the people we selected overwhelmingly submitted videos. And it's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some preconceived notions about the written applications that anyone reading those applications would have. If you win awards at invitationals that have smaller programs or a smaller field, maybe we don't weigh those individual awards as heavily as an award at GAMTI, right? Or an all-national attorney award or an all-American, obviously. But the video just sort of changes everything. And in some ways, you almost can throw everything else out if you've got an excellent video. Doesn't always happen. Usually the video matches the resume on paper. I'll give you a good example of a video that I was super impressed with last year. And I don't remember what her, how many awards she'd won, or
I wonder if we're going to say the same person.
Who are you thinking?
You go first.
You go first.
Arabella Larea.
Okay. Yeah. That wasn't what I was going to say, but she's definitely a good example. I mean, the thing about Arabella is she had a great video, but she sort of had the opposite application that we're describing, in the sense that she'd won the most awards in AMTA last year.
Right. She'd won a ton of awards. She hadn't yet gotten the platform to compete at nationals to show that she could win All-American award. The tournaments she went to were not consistently among the hardest competitions, but she had so many awards. It was like, how do you balance that? And then we watched the video and we're like, okay, well, she belongs here.
Yeah, I mean, her video was good. And I think I just remembered us talking about it and saying, like, how are we not going to have someone with a great video who's won the
Yeah.
most awards in AMPTA that season? I don't care that she's from a smaller program. It doesn't matter to me. And so that wasn't who I was going to say. Can you guess who I was going to say?
The last year?
Yes.
No. So I remember the year before, I thought Charlie Stock's video was really great. And I didn't know who Charlie was. And then I saw the video, I thought it was really great. So we offered him the alternate spot. Tell me, who really blew you away last year?
I thought Mary Pat's video, Mary Pat Peterson,
Oh, yeah.
participating in our plan. I thought her video was amazing. I was really, really high on her in the plan. I thought she was great in the plan round. I mean,
I agree.
she didn't win the first plan round that she was in, so she didn't advance to the final, obviously. But I thought she was excellent. Like, I would recommend people go watch that trial against Michael Chandler. I think it was really close, and I genuinely thought it could have gone either way. I thought she was fantastic. Again, someone from a small program who had a good amount of awards, but not like Arabella, who had the most in
Mhm.
AMTA. And
Yeah.
I just remember watching the video and thinking it was fantastic. She needs to be in the tournament in some way.
I have the same memory. So her video was great. And then like seeing her on the 24-hour prep, I was like, wow, she was so comfortable. Or what struck me about her was that she felt really natural. We would joke around about the AMPTA voice. She did not do that. She felt like a real person. And I was very impressed with her on the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I I thought she was excellent, and I think she would
Mhm.
have held her own in the field of 16 had she qualified. I thought she was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, all 8 of our playing candidates last year I thought were great, but she was one that I remember sort of what exemplifies what we're saying. Great video, smaller program, maybe the application, otherwise may not make it close, but the video just sort of solidified it. So we talked a little bit about what makes a good application.
Mhm.
Are there any things that you would avoid in filling your application out? I can think of a few.
Um, okay. Yeah, there's a few recurring themes that people have in applications that are, I think, less persuasive than they imagine.
All right, you say
So,
you say your least favorite one, and then I'll say mine.
oh, I pick one. Okay. When under the award section, they say something like, "I don't have any awards. I don't have very many awards. That's because my teammates keep winning them all." I'm always like, okay, well, maybe your teammates should apply. Like they sound really good.
Mine is similar.
Okay.
I like when, and this happens a lot, when they're like, "Oh, I closed against Bennett Dembski,
Yes.
and Ian Lampert told me mine was good
Right.
too."
Or like I closed against Sarah Stebbins and we split the closings. Or like somebody once told me that I was as good as so and so. Or, Sydney said she liked my closing.
We
Like
lost to
those,
Harvard by single digits at Works.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, obviously like enough of those details are useful, but the problem is you can't really you can't verify them. And everybody's got a story like that. So we look at the video and people's results.
My middle name is Ian Lampert, and so you should allow me in. Are there any other ones that you can think
Yeah,
of?
I remember that was a strange application. Like I'm like Travis Ian Lampert Harper,
Yeah.
the third. That's a long name. He asks people for like what makes them a diverse applicant, and those are really helpful answers. But sometimes they'll say something that really is not diverse. They'll be like, "I'm from the Northeast and I have an aggressive style." I'm like, well, it doesn't really separate. You're like, "I'm from the Midwest and I have an unusual style from the Midwest. I'm folksy." So I don't know that that's an unusual style from the Midwest, but um, I think those are the most common pitfalls in the application.
I'm calm and cool on cross and fierce in closing. At least that's what Ian Lampert told me once.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely stretch the call of the question on that part of the application for sure. I think those are the big ones. I mean, the biggest thing is it's not a time to be humble.
Oh
So
wait, can I offer one more?
yeah, of course.
This is probably my all-time favorite. somebody, the first year we did it, somebody applied and said, I've never won any awards, but that's because I'm a freshman. I've only been to one tournament. I was like, that does explain the lack of awards, but I don't think you're really doing yourself any favors.
I would have let that person in if I were in charge at that
Right.
time.
Right.
Yeah, thank God. So okay. In 2000, we talked about this a little bit, but in 2023, we started the play-in tournament.
Mhm.
And it was my idea. Are you willing to give me full credit for it?
Oh yeah. Didn't I say that a year ago that it was all you?
I don't know if you've ever said it publicly.
Okay. Well, I think we did, but we can annually say it was your idea.
Yeah, okay.
It was a great idea. I remember when you called me and suggested it, and you thought you were gonna have to convince me, and I was like, this is a rare good idea from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so right. I was so right. I thought it was going to be awesome. Just like a day of high level mock trial live on YouTube. I thought it was a fun day. Fun for me, maybe not so much fun for the competitors who had to go through the prep period, but I really liked it. Did you like it?
Oh, it was great. Like, first of all, the competitors are terrific. I always like the case day too, because you release it and then they start sending in questions, and the things that people spot immediately are so impressive. And then the next day you see these competitors again on 24 hours prep. They're terrific, and anybody can go watch the videos. And it felt like our version of the like March Madness weekend, like the first weekend of March Madness, where it's like back to back to back to back basketball games. And this was 4 back to back to back sets of trials. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, that was sort of what I was thinking. Like it's kind of like the first day of the NCAA tournament, like when there's a million
Right.
games going on and they're all good.
Yeah.
And it was great. I can't wait for this one. I think it's going to be even more fun. Now, I think we're going to have a great playing field this year now that
Mhm.
it is, especially now that it is sort of like it's been established as a thing. We're going to have a great field just like we did last year, and I think it's going to be awesome. And I think people are going to tune in more now that they're know what to expect and know that it's going to be live and all that. So I'm really pumped.
Me too.
So
I remember our biggest debate last year is what are we going to order in while
yeah,
we're watching those rounds? Because the way we have it set up is that there's 4 sets of rounds. It's 2 rounds simultaneous, then 2 rounds simultaneous, and the championship simultaneous. And you hosted the first set because you're on the East Coast and you got the time zone. And then I would host the second one, you'd host the third, I'd host the fourth. And when you were hosting, I had very few responsibilities and vice versa. So I remember we were debating like what are we going to have delivered while the other person was hosting.
what are we going to have delivered this year?
Given our track record, almost certainly sandwiches.
So I think it was early enough where a bagel was appropriate for me last
Mhm.
year at least.
Okay.
But I definitely had multiple takeout orders.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my Grubhub account was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." All right. Like there was like a health warning when I pressed submit.
Right.
All right, we'll give that some thought.
Like it's always embarrassing when I get like a DoorDash order and the number of utensils they include, like they're like, you must have ordered for 6 people. I'm like, I just ordered for me.
So the other day I was at the Kline Institute, at my office there doing some work before practice. I was there for the whole day. So lunchtime I ordered from my favorite stir fry place around the corner. And it got delivered and I went down to the lobby to get it and said hi to the security guard that sits at the front desk and ate it. Then a couple hours went by. And I'm being generous when I say a couple. Um, uh, I was hungry again and I wanted to order something else for dinner. And I was like, what do I want? And I said, I really want that stir fry again that I had earlier. And I said, you know what? I'm an adult. I can get whatever I want. So I Grubhubbed the same exact thing
Mhm.
to the same exact place. And the only bad thing about it was I had to go down and the security guard, like, I had to walk past the security guard and she watched me grab the same bag like 2 hours later that I'd grabbed earlier. I had no explanation. I just grabbed it and left.
At least she didn't know it was the same item.
She probably knew. I mean,
She probably
it said the name
suspected.
of the restaurant on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was horrible. So maybe I won't do that this year. Our first question is about witnesses versus attorney score to trial by combat. So before I get to the question, I'll just tee it up. For those who don't know, each competitor competes in 4 trials at trial by combat, once as a P attorney, once as a P witness, once as a D attorney, and once as a D witness. Their witness scores make up 30% of their overall score, and the rest, of course, is their attorney score. Some people say, hey, you should make the witness scores closer to 50-50. After all, witnesses are a big component of college mock trial. Some people say this is an attorney's tournament. And, when it comes down to it, the overwhelming majority of competitors here are here because of their attorney resumes, and some of them don't witness at all. Most of them actually probably don't witness at all. Why do we do it this way? And have we ever considered changing it?
So I started this format at Gladiator because, like I said, all this was modeled on Top Gun originally, but we had to modify it for the college and high school format where people will also perform as witnesses. And it worked really well at Gladiator, and people seem to like the balance, right? Attorney skill is more important in doing well at Gladiator and now Trial by Combat, but witnesses also make a difference. We've definitely had years where somebody just missed the cut because of their witness performance, or the witness performance on the flip side pushed them over into the top 4. There's no way we could do it where it's perfect, right? But I guess I like the fact it's a balance. I like the fact it becomes all attorney performance in the playoffs. But most of all, I like the fact that our competitors are playing witnesses too. I think the rounds are more fun when you also have superstars playing the witnesses, and they're not going to have the same level of incentive if they're not getting scored for their witness performance.
Yeah, and you sort of alluded to this a second ago, but I think the spirit of the event from the inception, although it's very competitive, obviously, is it just feels like kind of a big party, and having the competitors get to serve as each other's witnesses. I mean, you watch all these videos, you've got 4 of the top 16 competitors in the country in the room at once. It's so cool to watch the videos back. It's like there's, Murray witnessing for Brian, and there's, Rhea Debneth witnessing for Michael Chandler. It's just like really cool watching those back. And so I think it adds to the overall sort of collegiality and spirit and fun of the event. You have quite a few underclassmen who were in the field last year returning. What are you going to do about that? Are they guaranteed spots? Why don't you take this one?
The only person who's guaranteed a spot this year is the person who was our alternate last year, Jackson Cundy from Wisconsin. By virtue of being our alternate competitor available in case something happened to one of our 16, he has a guaranteed spot this year. Everybody else has to apply.
Are there competitors that you two want to win before the tournament begins?
Do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to take it?
Sure. I'll take it, and you can feel free to chime in. So the answer is, obviously in 2022, I was doing everything I could to rig it for Bennett Dembski. And
yeah.
Even with all of that help, just couldn't get it done. So
we had specific protocols. That tournament was in Los Angeles. We had specific protocols in place to prevent Phil from rigging it for Bennett. He wasn't allowed to judge Bennett's rounds, talk to judges who would later see Bennett, be within 100 feet of Bennett. I was like, "Are you feeding him scripts?" Like, we did our best to keep it fair.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't even tried to. Like, Willie Mueller hasn't been in the field yet, but like, I can't even imagine if he gets in 1 year.
Yeah. I might just have to not come to that one.
Yeah, you might just have to coach it and not.
Yeah, right. How did the tournament trophy become an actual sword? Didn't anyone from the law school tell you no?
So here's the story there.
Go ahead, make your joke. I'm gonna wind up for it and make your joke. You love it.
I do like it.
Do it.
We'll get there. So I did not come up with the idea for a sword in the logo, I don't think. But when the person at Drexel who does the great graphics, Brian, came up with a bunch of different logos. One of them had a sword. I'm like, oh, let's go with one with a sword. Like that's easy. And I'm like, wait a second, we should have a sword trophy. And I always say to the judges when I do the judge instruction, I hold up the sword and I say, this is what happens
when what?
I have a budget and no supervision.
And no supervision.
Right.
I would love to splice together all the years of you saying that at the closing.
I literally say it at every judge instruction. This is what happens when I have a budget and no supervision. It gets laughs, Phil.
It does. It does. It's
Yeah.
pathetic. It's actually pathetic. And those idiots are laughing. It's like Pavlov's dog. You wind up for it, they all just start dying.
You do judge instructions. Do you have any jokes you go back to over and over?
Yeah. It always gets a laugh. I say when I define conflicts, I say,
Do you steal my conflicts joke?
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be very upset if you because I have a couple that are my go-tos, and one of my maybe the most consistent laugh. No, number two is my conflicts joke. Let's see if we have the same one.
Mine is a dad joke. It's not really that funny.
Okay.
But I get to laugh every time. I
Okay.
say, so conflicts are, if you can't judge the team or the student impartially, it's a conflict. Just because you know them does not make it a conflict necessarily. So for example, if you get into the room and you say, I know that student, but I can judge impartially, then that's not a conflict. If you get into the room and you say, that student is my son, that's probably a conflict, and everybody laughs when I say that part. I wind up for it. The timing and the pacing is a little bit better than I just did it, but
Yeah.
it always gets laughs. What were you thinking?
That's my so I'm like, if you look around the room, you're like, hey, that's my daughter. Can't judge your daughter.
So you did it way better than me.
Can't judge family.
You made me look bad. I'm gonna definitely cut that out.
Here's the other one that sadly gets the most consistent, like uproarious laugh. Is at the end of the round, at the end of the orientation, I'll be like, and after the round, like they'll come up to you, or you'll give them feedback, and give them general feedback. Try to keep it short, like speak louder, make sure your questions are tighter. Convince them not to go to law school. And whenever I say like to lawyers, convince them not to go to law school, they laugh way too hard.
Yeah,
like there's some real cynicism among lawyers.
It's pretty dead. It's pretty sad actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we should retire both of our jokes. Your sword joke and my. All right,
Absolutely not.
I'm gonna mock you mercilessly this year in front of everyone. Since it's rolling admission, would it be better to submit my application early or wait for the spring season to accumulate more awards?
Do you want to take this one? Or you want me to do it?
Sure. I think it depends. I mean, obviously, if you feel like you've got a resume that is suitable for trial by combat, submit now. If you think you don't yet and you want to wait and see how the spring plays out, then I think that's fine too. The only other thing I would say is there's nothing preventing you from supplementing your application. So if you think you're probably going to apply, but you want to see how the spring shakes out, there's no prohibition from submitting your application now, and then to the extent that your team has success over the course of the next several months, you get a couple of individual awards, you can bring that to our attention and amend your application that way. And a lot of times that happens in the context of nationals results, where a student's team does really well, or they win an All-American or both, and they've got their application in already. But of course, we become aware of that information and it's included in their application. Does that cover it?
Yeah, I'll add, we want to do an apples to apples comparison. So obviously somebody who applies in January doesn't have the same resume opportunity as somebody who applies in April. So what we'll do is usually around orcs time, maybe right after orcs, we'll say, okay, if you're getting this email, that means you're a candidate. Can you resubmit an application or supplement it with anything you've won since X date? So that way we've got everybody's full file up to that point. And then we'll always get a flurry of applications right after nationals, like if people won an All-American or their team did really well. But at that point, they've got a complete application because it's the end of the year.
Last listener question. Why are TBC competitors not allowed to bring their own witnesses, which could compete in other rounds and give the competitors time to rest? When I read this question, I just imagined like Bennett and Travis Harper just like passed out in the hallways in between rounds. So why don't we do that?
I had a similar mental image because especially in your building, there's the obvious public space, but then there's like certain floors that are less trafficked and people like find their like little hideouts during the course of the weekend. And so I just imagine like competitors like trying to like rest during the competition or like doze or like setting their alarms like, oh, I got to be awake for the next round.
I remember you and I were walking the building last year, and I won't say where we were because I don't want people next time we're in Philly to like know where to go. But we were going to a place in the building where you should not, no one should know about because it's kind of tucked away to do something tournament related that we didn't want anyone to see.
Wait a second, this is when we found Tufts there, right?
So yeah, we walk into the room and Margaret and Bennett and their second chair were just standing in the room, and they looked like, you know, they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and we were just like, it's okay, we'll leave. It's you guys
Can I
stay
make
here.
an observation?
Yeah.
Here you are trying to protect the secrets of Bennett and his team. So you're already trying to rig future events so that way Bennett has his secret space secret.
And I should also add, I sort of made it seem like we were doing something nefarious and weird. I don't actually remember why we were going up there. Do you remember?
We were looking for supplies. And we figured they might be where combat had been held, like
Yeah, because
where we kept it from the last time we had combat.
we were in our supply closet, and then like oftentimes when I give people tours of the building, there is this floor in the building that has this room that has all the supplies from combat past. So the mask and the pipe from 2019, some of the ballots are kept in that room from years past, that back when we used paper ballots. So and we keep stuff in there. So I think we may have been looking for like tab cards for some reason. That's my vague memory. But
that sounds right. I don't know why we would have been looking for tab cards, but I think we were looking for tab cards.
Yeah. And so Bennett and Margaret and I think Ian were in that room, like doing something. And so
I think Margaret was getting her mid-round rest, right? Isn't that
right?
What our listener would have guessed?
Right. This is definitely Bozo Destroyer 1, 2, 3, 4 who submitted this question.
I remember that guy.
Yeah. I wonder how he's doing. How do you think he's doing?
He's doing great.
Definitely.
He's destroying bozos right and left. Should we actually answer the question?
Yeah. So why not let advocates bring a witness?
I think we want the best competitors playing witnesses. We think it's more fun.
Yeah. And, you know, just not to restate what we said earlier, but it adds to the collegiality of the event when we've got the advocates also playing witnesses. So we like the format. I think the competitors and the coaches like the format. So we're going to stick with it. Justin, do you want to tell everybody when and where Trial by Combat 2024 is going to be held?
I'm pulling up my calendar so I don't accidentally say the wrong date. All right.
Pathetic. This never happened. This didn't happen last year when we were in Philly. I knew the dates.
Thank you for that. We will be at the UCLA School of Law on June 21st to 23rd. So the case will drop on the 21st, rounds 1 through 3 on the 22nd, and round 4 and our playoffs on the 23rd.
As far as the play-in tournament goes, when will that be held?
Our play-in tournament is April 27th to 28th. So the case will drop on the 27th, and we'll have the opening ceremony that day. And then the next day will be all 6 play-in rounds.
When you're applying, you'll see that there's an option to apply for play-in, regular selection, or both. And of course, there are eligibility restrictions with respect to play-in. If your team has been represented in the Trial by Combat field, meaning the 16, not the play-in, then you are ineligible for the play-in. If your school's never been at the tournament, then you are eligible for the play-in tournament. When is the application deadline?
I think it's the Tuesday after nationals, right?
I think that's right. And the date, the exact date is in the application. The application is live. As we said earlier, someone has already submitted. Applications are going to be read on a rolling basis and decided on a rolling basis. So get your applications in now, and I'll leave my email and Justin's email in the description to this episode. Justin's email's on the impeachments post and in the application, so you'll be able to contact us if you have any questions.
Hey, Phil, I got a question for you.
Sure.
We're recording this on January 16th. Is Drexel still accepting applications for its School of Law?
That is a fantastic question, and I'm glad you asked. So that's correct. The Drexel University Thomas R. Kline School of Law is accepting applications to our law school, and specifically, the Kline School of Law is accepting applications to our courtroom scholarship program that Justin mentioned earlier, which is the scholarship that we have specifically set aside for AMTA competitors. And I should just say really briefly about the courtroom scholarship. We evaluate applications and accept students into our program in sort of all shapes and sizes. And so students from large programs who are at nationals every year, students at smaller programs who have never been to nationals, students who've won lots of awards, students who have never won an award. So to the extent that you're an AMPTA alum who cares a lot about mock trial and wants to be a trial lawyer, I'd encourage you to apply. And of course, you can email me with any questions about the scholarship, and I'd be happy to get in touch with you and chat about the law school. And Justin, I'm assuming the same is true for you.
Yeah, I love talking with prospective students. We have applications being accepted right now at UCLA, and of course, we've got our version of the courtroom scholarship, our Capella scholarship, for amazing AMPTA competitors. So we'd love to see applications.
Yeah, we are really looking forward to Trial by Combat. It's going to be excellent. I'm super excited to fly out to LA, and in the meantime, excited for the plan and to start looking at the applications. And we wish everyone good luck with regionals and orcs.
Good luck, everybody.